Agilists, welcome to Season 2 and the latest installments of the Virtually Agile videocast. Now, I'm a firm believer in neurodiversity and amplifying the voices of those that are seldom heard, so each season of the videocast will feature 4 newer voices as well as 4 established thought leaders. I'm fortunate enough to have been involved in a few events and conversation with Arie so far, including a panel discussion on the Agile Manifesto back as part of the Agile 20 Reflect Festival. He's a co-author of the Agile Manifesto, a thought leader at Wemanity group, and a fellow Agile agnostic who has just charged his glass of wine ready to go. Pleased to welcome Arie Van Bennekum to the show. How are you, Arie?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I'm really good. Just before you started the recording, we talked about the weather outside because it's warm. You're dressed up like it's warm. In
Absolutely.
Here, it's the same. I will not show my legs, but I'm sitting in my short, Bermuda, right? It's good. I love the work at the moment. COVID has changed, of course, because my work was travel.
Mm-hmm.
And then in January already last year, it really stopped. I had to get used to it. Now traveling is opening a bit. So because I miss it, right? I will never go back to the travel I did.
Mm-hmm.
That's a decision I made for myself. And I'm the only one who can architect my own life. You know that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very happy with a couple of things that happened in the sadness of COVID and the crisis. For myself, I'm feeling good the way things are going. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I think it's a really important point you mentioned there. COVID has been absolutely devastating for many, many reasons, but it's also accelerated change on the digital working side of things because it's enabled people to reevaluate how they want to spend their time in their lives. Maybe they don't want to spend 10 hours a week commuting anymore and use that time for spending time with their family, picking up new hobbies, just things for their mental and spiritual health. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what the next few years brings in terms of how we transition work-wise and whether offices will be still as important as they were, or maybe they'll become these hybrid environments. And there's a lot of discussion about that at the moment. What are your thoughts there?
Well, the couple of things they happen by force because often people ask me, Arie, Agile about face-to-face communication, and now we are geographically distributed and blah blah, and is that possible? And I will say, you and I see each other.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing so we have the verbal, the non-verbal, the paraverbal, everything is there. Great. The only thing is that we don't smell each other, right? So that's not necessarily a disadvantage in some cases. So I'm good. And that's the funny side of it. What for me was already common sense is that you can do transformation work, coaching work, agile work, collaboration, any kind of thing. You can that geographically distributed over the last, not when I started, right? Because when I started in the mid-90s, I remember it was just driving up and down to meet each other. And now over the last, I would say maybe 15 years, 10 years, really the connections really are good and you can do a lot. So I worked already with a lot of cross-border teams. The difference is, of course, everybody is home now.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, you had maybe in one team, 3 locations, that kind of thing. But COVID has made us clear that not everything has to be in an office. And I know from companies at the Netherlands that they're going to reduce their office space by 50% or more. Because they know that some people, everybody will come to the office, maybe a day a week or so, but they will also spend time at home, right? And just imagine, in your case, I don't know, but in my case, if I take my travel time and half the travel time is for work and the other half is for my family, what do you think, man? So I think that's and the environmental impact, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, it's so clear. So for me, I'm an optimist. So I take out of what happens, what is beneficial. And I think agile working, I think it's really good. You need to be on site together, have that cup of coffee or a beer or a wine or a bite, to get a deeper connection. The disadvantage I noticed, I was actually talking about it just an hour ago, is that you have the situation where you tend to go back to back from one meeting to another because people look on your agenda, oh, available.
Yeah.
And that moment where you and I, after a meeting, are on our way to another meeting or so, and you and I chat, or we go to the coffee machine because we take a break, or those are the moments that you miss. And that's something that you have to work on. You have to realize it. But for me, at the moment, it's going well, and I see also a lot of people getting out of it better. But the remote working is intense because of what I just said. That's very clear.
Yeah, there are some things that companies need to learn, that people need to learn about how to make it or help each other be successful in this remote working environment. You touched on a few things there about the difference between being face to face and being virtual. You don't have perhaps that physical connection. You can't shake hands with someone. Obviously, that's how contracts used to be signed. You know, you'd shake hands with someone, you'd have a physical connection, and that would create a sense of trust and a bond that perhaps you don't get because of the intangible nature of someone being behind a screen versus actually being able to shake their hand physically. You mentioned obviously the fact that this situation can cause bouncing between meetings to meetings to meetings, and the burnout and things like that can cause is something I know companies need to navigate. I know there's research going into it, and there was something I saw from Microsoft where they had various brain scans imaged over time, and the longer someone was in back-to-back meetings, the more stressed their brain was becoming.
Yeah.
And that's actually why recently I've been pushing, particularly within my company, and I've been sharing this with others as well, is that you can change your Outlook settings by default just to schedule meetings so they're 25 minutes and 50 minutes rather than half hour and an hour.
Yeah.
And that means that when you go to just put a conversation in the diary, it automatically sets to 25 minutes. You don't have to alter it. And that allows that 5-minute gap between meetings to disconnect a little bit, to use the bar, whatever it is you need to do to get up and stretch. And 50-minute meetings accordingly. I've always said that anything over 45 minutes is a workshop anyway. So why do you have all these hour-long meetings in the diary? It just, for me, it just compresses that in a little bit and just gives people the time back so they don't always, constant meetings.
There's a funny story I can share, and even remote, I walk into it. It's really something I really like, actually. A couple of years ago, I was doing a transformation in the south of Germany. And, the stereotype of Germany is like, disciplined.
Yeah, uber efficient.
And I remember, you would have a session about something, and that takes maybe an hour, right? Mm-hmm. It's not long, but it's an hour that you do about something. And then let's say it's from 10 to 11 and 5 to 11, they would stand up and walk away. And I would where are you going? I said, we have to be on time for the next meeting. So bye. And now I'm working very often with people from Germany remote. Mm-hmm. And if the session is 11 to 11:30, it's 11:28, and they say, sorry, I have to go, bye. And they're out. And as long as you are aligned on that kind of work, but I think that's the important, right? As long as you align together, that's how it works. I'm good. And I like that moment. Also, the example that you gave, 5 or 10 minutes earlier, that's it. And then you can have your coffee break or get a cup of coffee or... Yeah, sure. Good.
Whatever it is you need to do in that time, just to decompress for a few moments before being switched on again. And think about the reality is if you don't have those times and it is a back-to-back meeting, what happens is the first 5 minutes of meeting, you're probably waiting for people to arrive anyway. And then that's 5 minutes times however many people are in that meeting. That's a lot of wasted time just sitting around waiting for the previous meeting to finish and you just start on the next one. So it just makes sense. I don't know why we aren't doing more of this. And I think these are some of the things that a lot of companies are going to be looking to navigate in this whatever model they end up applying, particularly where if you've got a situation where you mentioned earlier, you might have a team that's comprised of people from this location, this location, this location, and they're never going to be face-to-face, or it's going to be very costly for them to always be face-to-face. So the reality is when one person in the team isn't co-located, you have to behave like everyone is remote. Otherwise, you end up being not inclusive of those people that aren't. Yeah. So you end up having to dial in anyway. And then you have a situation perhaps where people are traveling into an office and then just dialing into a meeting all day and not actually having conversations anyway. So it's going to be something I think interesting for companies to learn and navigate about. And I'm increasingly trying to think about how to create this virtual water cooler office environments. I've been playing with virtual whiteboards and trying to create a place where people can go and share random funny things, TV recommendations, books, but also here's latest updates, here's a bit about our team and that sort of thing, and trying to make this place where you can go, because we are missing those conversations we may have had on the way to a meeting room or over a coffee and those sorts of things. It can be done. I think there's going to be a lot of learning for companies.
Yeah, you have to be aware that this is going on and then act accordingly, and everybody can act in his own way. But ignoring it is the risk.
Yes.
Handle it in your way. That's okay.
Absolutely. So, Arie, given the theme of this show, this video cast, it's about amplifying newer voices. I'm keen to hear from you who you feel is doing great work out there, perhaps who isn't always speaking at conferences and events, that I should maybe reach out to and get involved in the show.
Well, you know Sam Zawadi, right?
I do indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I like his mind. I like the fact that he's humble.
Mm-hmm.
That's wide range, hardworking, healthy thoughts about agile and what it should bring. But you bump also into new people in Clubhouse. That is Ricardo is extremely active at the moment.
Ricardo Liberato.
Yeah, exactly, doing a great job.
I hosted Ricardo recently on an agile gaming meetup that I run every month or so. So he came along and demonstrated his version of the virtual coin game that was well received. So yeah, I know of Ricardo. I'll reach out to him. And Sam and I spoke only about a week ago about agile agnosticism, about the community that's being created. So yeah, I'll reach out to Sam as well.
There's more, Chris. Those are maybe even the obvious names that people know in the agile world. One of the guys that I really love is Tao Xia from China. Extremely involved, doing a lot of hard work, very reliable, and also a great agile transformation coach in China. Yeah, absolutely amazing. In Thailand, I work with Prathan and Prut. They are both guys, senior agile coaches, working hard, local heroes with the rest of the world. People might not know him.
Okay.
In Central Europe, I have Nenad, who is doing Nenad Stanic is always doing a lot of work, like a maniac going around. Very good coach. And if you go to the other side of the world, even like Latin America, I have Geronimo Vargas and Fernando Pincharoli. They work together. They have a connection to Spain. They're from Argentina. They have a connection to Spain. But what I like about all those people is I just have to send out an email. Guys, can we talk about this? And everybody's together. We set up a plan. And then we collaborate for the next 6 months on stuff that we're going to deliver together. And we deliver, right? And we're happy. And we feel it like a success. And that's cool. And those people, also with the different cultures, might be really interesting to get in. Yeah.
Great recommendations. I haven't featured anyone on the show from a couple of those parts of the world yet, so keen to get some of them involved. I will certainly reach out. Next question then. So we've talked about recently the Agile Manifesto. Agile was formalized, I guess, 20 years ago, the Agile Manifesto for software development. You've done some talks recently about where you feel Agile and I guess business agility is headed next. Anything you'd like to share? Where do you feel Agile is going next?
Next, I don't even know, because there's a little bit of time difference in where across the globe, where you are in the Agile journey, right? So you see some things happening here, and they happened already before somewhere else, and they're reoccurring. The one thing that always sort of buggled me is that people think that Agile is for IT only. And I know that bloody word software is in the manifesto. I know, blame it on the boogie. I mean, you can send me, all these hate mails, Arie, you should have done something about this. But I always worked Agile outside because you would have 5, 6, 7 teams working in parallel on the same backlog, but there would be software development in there, but there would also be the marketing in there. There would be, the audit trail would be different. So that's one. And I noticed that more and more people start becoming aware. They start sort of Oh yeah, you know what? Otherwise, you can't get to corporate agility, and that brings the next thing is the business agility, and that I mean, you have to understand that the way you run your business, the way you do innovations. Let me put it like this. You know, in the past, innovations would be like, oh, we do a proof of concept, and then we take 3 months to evaluate it, and then in the meanwhile, you're going bankrupt and left and right. You know, the competition has bypassed you. So understanding that innovation is part of because the technology and the pace of innovation disrupts business models, you need to be prepared, and you don't know what you need to be prepared for. So you need to have a completely different organization around innovation and running the business and getting the value. And then, of course, something that you and I touched on before as well is you need to understand that this kind of organizations need different kinds of people, and the people need to be treated in a different way. And sometimes people talk to me, oh yeah, but it's about the millennials, right? It's about the millennials. No, it's not necessarily about the millennials. I know the older people get, the less they are open to change. But you know, the way we worked 25 years ago, people don't want to work anymore. And that's so it's from the agile non-IT stuff to business agility to okay, and the people doing it actually, right? That's the thing that's where agile will be developing the most, I guess. Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in what you were saying there about agility applying regardless of the context, right? You can have agility in your personal life, you know, just have fast feedback loops with how you approach things, try new experiments, be open to change, that sort of thing, and see how things go. Pace of innovation. I had Joe Justice on the final episode of season 1, and he was leading Agile at Tesla, and they were talking about the hardware agility and how they try things and deliver things in 3 hours and then adjust accordingly and things like that. And the feedback loop they engender and the pace of innovation they create as a consequence allows companies like Tesla to be at the forefront of industries and innovate and change. So hugely, hugely important.
Yeah, what do you think, Chris, about running a recruitment campaign in an agile way? If you're in an area where resources, I know people are not resources, but where people, the
I'm
people
so
that
glad you said that.
you know, the people that you need are scarce, right? What do you do? And maybe there's a lot of competition to get those people around you. You are not waiting for this recruitment process where one makes the ad and the other one gets the first makes the appointment, and then the next one gets the first interview, and then another one makes and then no, you need to have a multidiscipline team, means doing everything in the definition of done on one recruitment the recruitment of one new employee, and making sure that it works like this, handing over to each other, sharing, and make it very high quality and very fast. Because you need to be ahead of the competition, man. And that's just an example.
I mean, talented people won't stay around for long. And if you've got a protracted recruitment process that means that a candidate is waiting over a week or a couple of weeks for the next interview, you're just going to lose that person to a competitor. So you have to be responsive and agile about how you recruit.
Yeah, and if you want to recruit an agile professional, and then you show that you have a very long traditional process for recruitment, people are long gone, man. They don't want you anymore.
Yeah, they will get very scared. Right, keen to discuss agile agnosticism with you. We kind of touched upon it earlier. You mentioned Sam. What is it about agile agnosticism that you feel resonates with you? Why do you feel it's important? And what does agile agnosticism mean to you?
Okay, so what does it mean to me? You know, when we wrote the manifesto, we were there with 17 people. We were all working in a different way compared to traditional waterfall processes. But we had different angles why we work differently, and we had different ways of working differently. And that means that an agile practitioner, mind the gap, the agile practitioner is not using dogmatic one methodology, but is using agile practices. And also, this same agile practitioner, and I think that's a characteristic of a true agilist, is also open to learn from others things that he or she has never seen before, never heard before. I very often, when I'm on stage, I will say to people, agnostic agile is about using. So you have the concept of agile, then you have the methodologies like TDD and XP and adaptive and crystal and scrum and DSDM and lean and kanban, right? And they have all their practices, and this is the level where you are working on. And depending on where you think you can improve your team, you pick a practice here and you pick a practice there, right? That's what it should be. And if you're dogmatic, you limit yourself. Any kind of dogmatism limits yourself. And the one thing that an agilist is not is being limited. So being open to learn is for me the most essential one. And what I like to do, and not because of the problem that we just talked about, not in the remote times, because I go from sometimes 3-4 conferences a day. I like to be, when I'm on a conference on site, after my talk, I go to visit little side talks and listen to people in their own environment with their own technology doing their stuff. I think, okay, what can I learn here? And I think that's what agnostic agile is about. Using the practices to your benefit, because then you take the benefit from other people's hard learnings, because some learnings are really hard. But also never stop the experimenting and trying to improve in your specific situation. Yep. That's agnostic.
Love that. I'm a big fan of using, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, there's a Deloitte subway map of what agile is. And what it does is every little node, if you imagine the London subway, for example, you've got all these tube stations like Tottenham Court Road and Arsenal, etc., etc. What they've done is they've mapped all the potential agile practices onto each node of that, and then you click in and you learn a bit more about them. And it's got on the for example, on there, it's got crystal, it's got TDD, etc. All of the potential things you can think of.
Yeah,
and to me, that's just a great visual to say, here's what agile is, here's what it could be. But what agile is to you could mean borrowing bits of it here, bits of it there, experimenting with this, fine, you like that, you don't like this, and continuously experimenting. And I often describe, to me, agile as a tool belt, right? And on my left hip, I might have Scrum, like representing a hammer. On my right hip, I might be TDD as a saw. And I might use various tools to try and find what works for the situation, the client, the company, the people I'm with. And therefore, that's how agile agnosticism is to me. It's not being dogmatic, absolutely not.
Exactly.
And in fact, I often say, if any of the agile frameworks out there were truly agile about it, they would include something on their implementation roadmap to say, hang on, is this framework even for you? Have you tried this or should you try that? Rather than being dogmatic about pushing their own framework. But
it's the business model. I always say, when the framework is not there to help your client, but it's to make money for them, then the shit hits the fan. I mean, that's what happens, right? At the same time, you and I are professionals, and we know that that's their way. Great, but at the client side, I do it in a different way, and I want to work with my client what helps the client most.
And I've learned this lesson myself. I have in the past. I became somewhat attached to a certain framework. I'd worked with it for a few years, and I was comfortable with it, and I'd seen it work successfully. And when I went into a new client, I thought, well, I've seen that work successfully. Why don't we do that same thing again here? And I'd push that agenda before really understanding the situation, the context, the people. So I've made this mistake in the past. I've learned from it. I don't follow that ethos anymore. And when I'm working with anyone new nowadays, it's purely a listening exercise. What are things currently being done now? Meet people where they are, and then find the experiment that works for them. And that could be a huge blend of various agile possibilities out there until we find what works for them. And that's why I often say, innovate, don't replicate. Don't just copy the latest Spotify model. Don't just copy this and that. Just try things until you learn what works for you.
Never copy. Don't copy.
Yeah.
And I think in hindsight, I've been an agnostic. I didn't know the word, most likely. But I've been an agnostic since 1994 when I got into this, because my first steps were with the rapid application development. But I always did it, quote unquote, my way. I started innovating and improving. One of the things is that I remember that the rapid application development was talk about doing workshops. I had no clue. It was 1994. I was 30 years old. I had no clue what a proper workshop was. So learning that, what kind of workshops do you have? Then I missed the workshop, so I started doing heartbeats or stakeholder sessions to avoid delay. Very successful. Awesome. Okay, great. So you help other people forward and use it to your own benefit. And that kind of thinking always is, learning, experimenting, and sharing. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. One of my favorite phrases I've ever seen you come out with is where you've talked about being such an advocate of being the architect of your own life. And I understand you've released a book with that same title. So would you, he's looking around, where is it? I've only because I saw it on your website. Do you have a copy anywhere? There we go. You are the architect of your own life.
Yeah.
Now, Arie, would you mind sharing with our listeners what's the book about, and what does this phrase mean to you?
So, I never wrote the book. So this is my first exercise. It's my first book.
Congratulations.
Because I do a lot of publications, articles and stuff, but I thought I need to do something more. And I'm a lot on stage doing masterclass. People ask, what is your book? So this was my exercise, because it evolved from the fact that people would say after a talk on stage, man, the way you got into Agile, that's really an inspiring story. Going from the healthcare into the military, and then, and what I mean with you're the architect of your own life is the fact that people, I see so many people that are complaining about, this is the situation that I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, okay, so you're complaining. Yeah. So I don't like complaining. I do sometimes, right? I take my whiskey and I start complaining, and all the world is ugly to me. But then I kick my ass and I think, okay, the point is, complaining doesn't help, right? So if you are in a situation that you don't like, accept it, change it, or leave. And don't, if you start complaining and look at other people, when you point at other people, and I sometimes do too, right? I'm a human being, but realize 5 minutes later in your reflection, you think, okay, I pointed at something, because most of the time people, the culture or the company. But if I point 3 fingers, point at myself, right? So you cannot manage, let me use this horrible word, you cannot manage what's coming to you, but you can decide how you handle it. Mm-hmm. And you're the architect of your own life. So, when I was doing my career in the healthcare, and I could have stayed there, future was settled. I had my own practice that I could go in, was already prepared. And I thought, no, and you leave, and you have to handle that uncertainty, because that's what you talk about. Then I got into the military, and my company commander said to me, Arie, you want me to write a letter so you can go to the military academy, a letter of recommendation, because I'm open to do that for you. And I said, thank you. And it means that, again, a future was there, completely set, right? I said, no, it's not my game for the rest of my life. And I tried to find my own way. And even in my quote unquote IT career that I started in 1987, I switched career, let me put it like this, a couple of times. When you're going back in salary and that kind of thing. And if you trust yourself and you believe yourself and you work hard, you get there. And that's being the architect of your own life. And it's not about work in paying money, but in life. If you want to improve your garden, you have to do something about it, right? Mm-hmm. You can complain about the weather, but the weather is there. What are you going to do about it? And that's the architect of your own life. And that's also the situation, because I'm finalizing my second book at the moment. The working title is Reaching for Business Agility. For me, it's the same thing. I get all those things coming to me, and in the mid-90s it was less methodologies and frameworks than today. And then I thought, okay, what can I learn from it, and what do I want to add, because it's coming, but I think this would be helping better. And having that free spirit, you're the architect of your own life. You keep yourself hostage, and I think everybody deserves better than to keep themselves hostage, right?
Absolutely. I think the reason that phrase resonates with me in particular is because I have taken control of my own life myself. If I reflect back to when I was 16, I was at school. I had 53% attendance in my final year of school, which is very, very low, almost just over half the time I was there. And it meant that when I went to take my exams, they only put me in for a certain number of them because I wasn't there enough. And one of my not achievements, but one of my favorite things I own, one of my prized possessions is my list of grades from that year, because they were awful, right? And I can literally hold those up and say, look how bad I was once upon a time. Look how bad I was. I had no. And if you think about what all the pressure you're under at that time of your life, to get good grades, to go on to the next level, university, etc. To me, that was like a great way of me showing, look, I messed up, I fucked up, I made mistakes. It's okay, but I changed that. And now I'm relatively successful. I enjoy what I do. You don't, just because you make some mistakes in the past doesn't mean you can't re-architect your life and take steps to improve it.
Absolutely.
That's why I like that phrase. So thank you for sharing that. Question for you though. What advice do you have to others so that they could adopt that be the architect of your own life mindset?
We are all, no, most people are heavily in love with their comfort zone. And I understand that because it's all what you know, but you pretend a safety that's not there because things will happen, right? And um, in my opinion, we have one lifetime. That's my belief. So other people have different beliefs. I know that, but my belief, you have one life, and spend it wisely. I am not telling you that you have to do it for your friends or for your family or for yourself, or that's up to you. But spend it wisely and think about it. And one thing that I remember, because I take my lessons all the time wherever I am, one of the things I know from the military is that, because we had also those exercises at the special forces, and you think, now I'm done, I can't do anymore, I'm completely done. And then even 10 times more, you can get up 10, you can and go more. There's always more that you can do. And I'm not talking about working 20 hours a day, because people that are proud of working 20 hours a day, I would like to send them to a therapist. Right? That's my opinion. Let's put in another phrase: life work balance. But it's true, right? And you decide where your happiness is. Don't let anybody else tell you what your happiness is, but also don't fool yourself. Reflect. What is it that you like? And it's okay, by the way, that today you like this and 6 months from now you like something else. Great. Make your choices. Take it. Be the architect of your own life. Handle it.
Humans are not immutable. We are capable of change. And what you were saying is about we have these limits, these self-beliefs. I can't do anything more than this. But actually, we're so resilient. One of the reasons that humans have become the apex predator, the most dominant species on the planet, is because of our resilience. We would literally outlast some of our foes when they needed to rest and things like that, or we could go this amount of time without having food or water and stuff. It's our ability to be resilient that's enabled us to be as successful as we are.
Also, Chris, to overcome traumas.
Yeah,
I understand. And let's talk just business, right? You have been in working environments where you were forced and you were controlled, and okay, I understand, and I know your habits and your reflexes are there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, all those things, and you have those little videos that they suggest to you. And once you look at one type of video, you get a lot of those the same. So the videos that I get at the moment, because I clicked that one, is that dogs that were caught being in a really, really, really bad shape, close to death, just skin and bone, nothing else. And they are very, very scared of people. They are very scared of interacting even with other dogs and that kind of thing. And then you see someone taking time. And then after 2 months, there's a very healthy, playful, happy dog. We can be those happy dogs too. I know someone working with Wemanity as an agile coach. And at one moment in time, he came to me and he said, Arie, listen, I don't think I will be working with Wemanity long. I said, okay, what's going on? He said, I am tired of working with those grumpy old guys. Because he was, and it was, I know what company he was at the time, and I could see it. Fuck, man, this happens. I think as a coach, and you and I are as a coaches, right? As a coach, we can even leave the word agile. If you can find a way to make people feel happy, that's awesome. You're not a therapist, don't get me wrong. But trauma is maybe not completely right when the way I use it. But if I look at that situation, by intuition, overcoming traumas, because those dogs have traumas. They've been beaten up, starving, all these things, right? So we could be. So everybody is able to adapt to a new environment. Don't give me that shit that it's possible. Because people say, oh, it's not our culture. And I was like, fuck you. Because culture is like an empty bucket, Chris. It's like an empty bucket, and it's filled up by people and their habits. So those people can change their habits together. That's what they can.
Yeah.
And if it's not happening, it's them hindering, nobody else. And that's where you're the architect of your own life.
I think everyone has a role to play in cultural change. You've got to start somewhere with an experiment, and then enough people get involved, you have that kind of curve where people start doing something and then it becomes the normal way of doing things. And I think everyone can play a part. And that's why when I hear the term resources being described to use for people, I often challenge it, and I encourage others to challenge as well, because it's only through enough people doing that we'll stop using language like that. Yeah, really, really good points there. Now, we're coming to the end. So final question, and that's around retrospectives. So I love creating retrospectives. I like to have immersive and fun experiences for teams to keep them engaged. And I ask every guest on the show to add a new themed retro to my backlog. And I've had suggestions from Mike Cohen, like Taco Tuesday. I've had someone suggest Aussie animals, one around Peru. So what retrospective theme would you add to my backlog?
Yeah, wow. So, cooking.
Cooking, okay.
And why? It's COVID. I'm home a lot, right?
Okay.
And I noticed, and this is very human because I'm human, like you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
I like cooking. I actually do, but I have a busy life. So Arie's flying around the globe, having awesome food everywhere I go, because my hosts always knows Arie like food and wine, so they drag me all over the place. Arie has an awesome life. But I also found out that what happens is that in your own kitchen, you tend to repeat what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And here is Arie, COVID, home 24/7, almost 24/7. And a friend of mine that I play golf with very often, she bought me a membership of a cooking magazine, a nice cooking magazine. And I said to myself, okay, there's one coming every month, right? And from every magazine, I will take at least one new recipe, at least one.
Okay.
So tonight I will make my cucumber shrimp soup. It's absolutely amazing. My youngest son, who is living with me, he's 25, is living with me still. He loves it. And he said at one moment in time, got kind of boring. Your cooking is good, but I know it, right?
Yeah.
And hey, this is really good. Retrospectives are very sensitive sessions, very sensitive workshops, because sometimes things come to the table that are not easy because things went wrong. There's always the root cause analysis, because you can only improve when you know what the problem is, right? So it will be shown at least. You need to have this very safe environment. And the one thing that you don't want is that people know every minute what's going to happen. So you have to create that atmosphere where people feel free. Transparency is really there. I think very process on the recipe, the cooking, is very helpful. And I think you can use the cooking as well. There are more people in there.
I do indeed. I've got some thoughts springing to mind around what's our secret ingredients as a team. What can we try? What can we do to spice things up? There's all sorts of metaphor and analogy I can apply related to cooking in retrospective that will get people thinking a little bit differently. Because I'm loath to use, or I'm often to encourage people to stop using just the start, stop, continue, like to learn to love, because they can become very stale and the same things come up over and over. Right, we are at the end of the show. So are there any final things you'd like to share with the listeners today, Arie?
Yeah, one thing. We like our comfort zone, but there is only one person that can break your comfort zone, and that's you. And about change and about, looking at other people, it's so difficult, and they don't want this, or the culture, or I was talking to Mr. Kofi Annan 10, 12 years ago. And I was at the table with him and a couple of others. It was a group like 4 or 5 people. We were at the table for an hour and a half, and I asked him a question about, what is the message to my sons are now 25 and 29, but at the time they were maybe like 14 and 18 or something. I said, what's the message that I can give to my boys? What do you think? And he said, Arie, tell your boys, change always starts with one person. So take your responsibility and be the architect of your own life.
Wonderful final thought to leave us on. So thank you for being involved in the show today, Arie. For our listeners, future episodes of season 2, we'll be hearing from Basfod, the creator of Less, Aino Corey, another retrospective fan, Pia Thorin, who created Agile People, and Neil Warnell. So keep an eye on the YouTube channel and LinkedIn to hear more about these episodes. Thank you again for being involved, Arie. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you next time.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you very much.
Yes. Bye.